Hello, class. Our research topic is maternal complications with repeat cesarean sections after the primary cesarean birth. Our problem statement from our initial project is as follows. Failure to offer a trial of labor after cesarean, otherwise known as TOLAC, is potentially a dangerous decision with potential lifelong consequences to women. Many women, especially women in rural areas, are essentially forced to have a repeat cesarean due to facility policies not supporting VBAC. Not only are many morbidities associated with repeat cesarean to women, but there are also morbidities associated with the child born via cesarean. Declining a woman a TOLAC and the chances to have a VBAC renders more risk to the mother and her newborn. The issue at hand is that cesarean rates average at around 31%. This comes from Martin et al. 2022. While a cesarean can be a life-saving surgery, it can be argued with evidence that this procedure is overused, therefore increasing mortalities to women and babies that could have perhaps been avoided altogether if these candidates have been educated on a VBAC educated on a TOLAC resulting in a VBAC. Evaluating evidence and supporting the data would have great benefit on women and their babies. The lack of availability for individuals who are candidates to have a vaginal birth after cesarean has the potential to further increase poor outcomes relating to maternity care. Moving on, we chose these components stated in our problem statement primarily because we live in a community that does not support VBAC after primary cesarean despite overwhelming evidence available. Moving on to our PICO question, which is, for women who've had repeat cesarean sections, what is the risk of maternal complications in future pregnancies? We asked this question to AI and regarding several components of research, and AI gave us answers that we have individually critiqued. Now, collectively, as a group, we will proceed with our individual breakdowns by category of critique for this assignment.
Hi class, I will be doing the study design. So based on the question that was used from the PCOT, retrospective study design was suggested to be the study type because it offers several advantages for investigating the risk of maternal complications in future pregnancies following repeat cesarean sections. It also has a large sample size and it also includes ethical considerations. The reason that I agree with this study design is because studying the occurrence of maternal complications in future pregnancies following repeat cesarean sections would necessitate a long follow-up period, and retrospective study design encompasses it. According to ChatGPT, the approach that was taken for this study was an observational approach. I do agree with this approach because the study observes the frequency of maternal problems in women who have had several cesarean procedures in the past during subsequent pregnancies. There are no experimental procedures or interventions involved. Without doing direct variable manipulation or intervention, the study just observes and analyzes relationships between repeated cesarean procedures and outcome maternal problems. It seeks to comprehend how these components naturally relate to one another in everyday situations. According to ChatGPT, the nature of the study for our research proposal is a cohort study, which I do agree because it is following a group over a period of time. The purpose of the study is to evaluate the external validation of prediction models, which are the Grobman Model 2007, the Zhang Model 2020, and the Grobman Model 2021, for predicting vaginal birth among women who have had a cesarean section in the past following a labor trial. A cohort of women who meet predetermined criteria, such as having had a previous cesarean section, are put together and they are then followed over a time to assess how well prediction models perform in forecasting the desired outcome. The predictive ability of the models was assessed using the area under the receiver operator characteristics curve, also known as the AUC, and a calibration graph.
Okay, I will be doing the study method. So first, the method. The original sampling method that we got from ChatGPT was very vague and it did not give distinctive methods. With further questioning, it gave us consecutive sampling. And with consecutive sampling, there are many advantages, such as it allows quick data access, it is suitable for smaller populations, and it makes the data easier to collect. Consecutive sampling of eligible participants will be conducted using electronic medical records of women who have undergone repeat cesarean sections within the study period. So to determine sample size, ChatGPT gave us a few statistical parameters, which includes sample size calculation method, conducting sample size calculation, considering practical considerations, and validating sample size. Although this is a good step-by-step, it is complex and it may be confusing for those who aren't used to research sample sizes. A useful method that may help to determine sample size is to utilize data saturation, as it helps collect data and it saves time from collecting unnecessary data. Next, the eligibility criteria. So it's inclusion and exclusion criteria. So inclusion is women who have had previous cesareans, women who are currently pregnant or have had subsequent pregnancies following a cesarean, and their medical records have to be eligible to the researchers. The exclusion criteria includes that since we're only focusing on repeat cesarean sections, we're gonna exclude women who have had VBACs, as they have not had a repeat cesarean section, and those whose records are not available, as well as multifetal gestations. So next is method to assign subjects. So grouping is going to be based on exposed and unexposed. Follow-up period, comparing outcomes and adjusting for confounding variables. The exposed group is going to be those who've had a repeat cesarean section, and the unexposed are those who haven't had a repeat. This is good as it gives researchers a comparison for the results. ChatGPT mentions a follow-up, which means we would have to adjust the sampling method, as it is only pulling from data and not meeting the subjects face-to-face.
Hello class, I will be going over variables. According to ChatGPT, they have independent variables being categorized as number of previous C-sections that a woman has had, that will determine if a woman has complications. I don't agree with this variable, it being independent variable, because they're still depending the complications on what the previous pregnancy outcomes are for that particular mommy. For dependent variables, ChatGPT bases the possibility of the complications of repeat C-sections on if a woman has previously had complications such as placenta previa, placenta accreta, uterine rupture, or maternal mortality. I agree with this because their findings are being dependent on whether or not the woman has had complications previously in her pregnancies.
Hey everybody, sorry I'm on multiple devices, going through multiple power outages as I just experienced as to why I switched again. So I'm going to be going over data measurement. So when looking at accumulated data from the collective toe of group 2 and the suggestions AI has to offer, I believe valuable information and suggestions can be gathered from both sources and used for the proposal question that was asked to AI, which is, for women who have had repeat C-sections, what is the risk of maternal complications in future pregnancies? On this measurement tools, on this slide, you can see my opinions for exceptional data measurement tools. If you can move to the next slide, please. So this slide right here is what was gathered from the table of evidence. And then if you want to go to the next one. This was suggested from GPT chat. And then my third slide, these were the ones that I chose that were exceptional. And I'll kind of go over that and why. So descriptive statistics, those include a mean, median, and mode. These variables can be very helpful in prediction of future risk of maternal complications regarding multiple cesarean births. Now, moving on to logistic regression, this includes using an algorithm to predict probability. Algorithms can help researchers to see trends and potentially spot error. And in this case, could the potential error be that we're not educating moms on the risk of multiple C-sections after that first incision? Now moving on to consistency checks. Consistency checks include verification of consistency from multiple sources. This can be very helpful in proving a point, cause, or whatever one is trying to prove. Next one is intra-rater reliability. This is somewhat of a consistency check as well, as this method measures the consistency obtained from data records, from data recorded, I'm sorry. And lastly, electronic health records. This is going to be objective data that has been collected that could identify maternal complications. Accumulation of records collectively could help researchers identify maternal complications with great accuracy and predictability through trends that can likely be found through this type of data measurement. And that is why I chose those ones. So essentially, I gleaned information from both our TOE and from GPT chat. And in summary, they both had great great opinions as to the proposal for the PICO that we are presenting.
Okay, I'm going to be hopping onto my portion of our, argument with ChatGPT. So when it came to data analysis, what ChatGPT recommends is a multivariable logistic regression analysis, which using this method allows us to account for additional variables that can influence our data. So maternal age, parity, gestational age, and comorbidities. This is particularly strong. However, there are additional factors that help negate the need to use multivariable logistic regression analysis. And that is one, the use of an exclusion criteria to negate drastic outliers within a data set. So for instance, advanced maternal age, and the use of inclusion criteria to accurately assess or accurately measure data within a set population or demographic. Now, while ChatGPT has offered good information as for a resemblance of data analysis, there are methods of analysis that could be substituted instead of multivariable logistic regression. So for instance, bivariate can be used instead to monitor for distinctions from two separate variables. Rather than using a design of two, ChatGPT uses an algorithmic analysis to determine that multivariable logistic regression is the best form of analysis for this study. However, this would only add additional layers of busy work to the research study by including multiple variables within the variables we are determining if complications occur or not occur. So essentially, it's trying to make our research study more difficult than it needs to be. And at the end of the day, what we're trying to monitor for is if complications occur or if they do not occur. So those are our two variables, and that's why bivariate would be better for this specific study. So with ChatGPT, it has a good model set in place, but the model would more so benefit larger studies with more advanced methods of testing than what we have chose to research. Now, moving on to my next slide. This is a data analysis of my quantitative study, which is failure rate related factors in neonatal complications of vaginal delivery after cesarean section by Asgharian. They chose to use a t-test, which a t-test is, it's an inferential statistic used to determine if there is significant difference between the means of two groups and how they're related, as well as a chi-square test, which is a bit more complicated. It's a statistical hypothesis that is used in analysis of contingency tables, so usually tables within research studies, when sample sizes are large. Now, in particular, this sample size was only 150, so it wasn't too big, but it could have been bigger, could have been smaller. But in simpler terms, this test is primarily used to examine whether two categorical variables are independent in influencing the test statistic. So essentially, both of these are appropriate measures for identifying if complications occur or do not occur. They both measure via bivariate means to identify two variables, and that is if complications occur and do not occur. So that's primarily what we're focusing on in our data analysis. Now, moving on to statistical significance. This is where it really starts to matter, where our data really matters, because at the end of the day, if it's not either clinically significant or statistically significant, it's going to be thrown out. And we use this by interpreting our adjusted odds ratios as the relative risk of maternal complications associated with repeat cesarean sections and controlling for effects of other covariates in the model. So essentially trying to make each variable as independent as possible unless it needs to be dependent on a specific independent variable. So we need to assess the statistical significance of associations based on p-values, which our p-value is essentially they're commonly used in research to measure for probabilities, typically in statistics. But it's essentially if something's going to happen or if it's not going to happen, and it uses a probability curve to associate that. And they also use 95% confidence intervals. So you want your study to be, if it needs to be strong, it needs to be less than 5%. Otherwise, there is a null hypothesis that is in play. And that is essentially rejecting the initial hypothesis of why the study was started in the first place. So you want to remain within that 0.5%, which that is what ChatGPT is recommending, is a 0.05 means of deviation, meaning that as long as it's 5% and lower, it's a good study, which the p-values and this 5% deviation is perfect. I think you can't get much better than that unless you're looking at multiple variables over a long period of time. But anyways, by using associations based on p-values, it is possible to identify probable outcomes in a data set and predict with 5% deviation the outcome or result. So essentially, it's making sure accuracy is there. I do agree with ChatGPT on this aspect because at the end of the day, like I mentioned, if it's not statistically significant and it's not clinically significant, it's not going to get used in the long term. So that is all of our presentation. Thank you guys for watching.